right, I think we will get started. It's 5:33 according to my clock here, so we will get started. Good evening again, everyone. Welcome to you all and thanks for joining this webinar. My name is Bronwyn Olliffe. I'm an Associate Professor here. I'm the Director for Professional Education. I'm the Head of the Practical Legal Training Program, and I'm also the Acting Director of Academic Programs. So quite a few titles at the moment, but the reason I joined UTS 24 years ago was to help set up the Practical Legal Training Program here at UTS. So I've very much enjoyed my time here at UTS, and I think it is a fabulous institution, and I hope you agree with me on that score. This session is being recorded. You won't be on camera at all. It's useful for us to have a recording of these information sessions so that we get a good understanding of the sorts of questions that students are wanting to ask about our practical legal training program. So thanks very much for allowing us to record this session. If anyone does have an issue with this, then if you don't want to be involved, then you may contact UTS at that address that you can see there, marketingprivacy@uts.edu, and you can discuss any questions that you might have. Just while we're on that issue, if you do have any questions during this webinar, we invite you to put those questions into the Q&A section. So ask a question at any time. Some of the questions will be able to be answered immediately, but others we will answer at the end of the session. Just before we get into the body of tonight's information session, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, upon whose ancestral lands our city campus now stands. I would also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this land. All right, so if you're here in this webinar, you are interested in our practical legal training course, and you will be aware that to enable you to become a lawyer within New South Wales and then by mutual recognition across all of Australia, you need to not only have your law degree, but you need to have a course of practical legal training as well. Once you have completed that course of practical legal training, you can apply to the Supreme Court of New South Wales for admission. All of the documentation has to first go to the Legal Profession Admission Board of New South Wales. The LPAB, as we call it, will issue a certificate of compliance to say that you have met all of the requirements to become a lawyer in New South Wales, and you will undergo an admission ceremony in the Supreme Court. So in non-COVID times, that is a wonderful ceremony which takes place in the Banco Court of the Supreme Court, and the Chief Justice is the presiding judge for the day. In the time of COVID, other arrangements are being made. Once you have been admitted to the Supreme Court, you get admitted as a lawyer, it is then up to you to decide whether or not you're going to practice as a solicitor or as a barrister. The majority of recent law graduates will take out a practicing certificate with the New South Wales Law Society. That first certificate that you get is a restricted practicing certificate. You have to have a supervisor, and you'll be supervised for the first 2 years of practice. After that time, you can apply for an unrestricted practicing certificate. If you want to go directly to the bar and not become a solicitor, that is an option, but what you have to do is you have to first pass the bar exams. Once you have passed the bar exams, you then do the bar practice course, and then you have to find somebody, a barrister with at least 7 years experience who you'll be able to read with. So there are a few more steps involved if you're wanting to become a barrister rather than a solicitor. Most law graduates will become a solicitor, and they will practice for a couple of years as a solicitor, and then if they want to, they then go to the bar. Okay, so as I mentioned, I came to UTS 24 years ago, at the time when UTS had decided to set up its own course of practical legal training. Our course was accredited by the New South Wales LPAB. If you're offering a course of practical legal training and you want the graduates of your course to become eligible for admission, then you have to have your course approved by the LPAB, and we have had our course approved and we continue to have that course approved. Our course is offered in a very flexible way. Since the year 2000, we've been offering what we've referred to as an off-campus course, which basically is an online course. It does involve a couple of days of attendance towards the end of whichever session you are completing the subjects legal and professional skills and litigation and estate practice. But I'll talk to you a little bit more about those requirements later on. It's very flexible in that you don't have to choose to do all of the course online or all of the course on a face-to-face basis. You can mix it up so that you might do one subject on a face-to-face basis and do the other two subjects that you're required to do on an online basis. One of the subjects within our practical legal training program is the subject practical experience, where you have to have a work placement. This is the area that usually generates the most questions, and I'll give you some more detail about practical experience, and you can ask any questions that you want as we go along. The sorts of assessment tasks that we use in our practical legal training program we would refer to as experiential learning. It is the sort of task that you would be undertaking in your first job after admission to practice. There is the possibility to commence your practical legal training course prior to the completion of your law degree, so long as you have completed all law subjects and have no more than 2 electives remaining. As UTS students, you have a real opportunity for excellent value in that you are entitled to a 10% discount on the fee for the Graduate Certificate in Professional Legal Practice, and that's available for all UTS students and alumni. You also get, everybody gets, who has a law degree, a 6 credit point recognition of prior learning for 6 points of the 24 credit point Graduate Certificate in Professional Legal Practice. So as I mentioned, it's a very flexible course in the way that it is offered. You can do it on a full-time basis, or you could do it on a part-time basis. For the off-campus course, it's mostly online delivery with just 3 or 4 days of on-campus interaction, but on some of those days you might just be here for a short period of time. We have intakes in autumn, spring and summer. Our summer course is only ever offered on an online basis, whereas our autumn and spring courses are available both online and on a face-to-face basis. You just have to choose what is the best arrangement for you, what fits in with your life. If you have employment and you need to be attending your place of employment during the daytime, we do have part-time options in the evening if you're undertaking the face-to-face course. So our practical legal training course at UTS is made up of the 4 subjects that you can see listed on that overhead. So there are legal and professional skills, transactional practice, litigation and estate practice, and practical experience. You can see there that the first 3 subjects are each worth 6 credit points, and they're just like the 6 credit point electives that you have been doing as part of your law degree. And in fact, if you are an LLB student, you can do those 3 subjects as electives within your law degree. The subject practical experience is worth 0 credit points, so there are no fees paid for that subject. Also, as the slide indicates there, all LLB and JD graduates receive 6 credit points of credit recognition, meaning that you only pay for 18 credit points within this 24 credit point graduate certificate. At UTS, you will be taught by committed teachers who are either in practice or have only very recently ceased practicing. They know what you need to know, and they're one of the main reasons why I would be recommending that you do your PLT here at UTS. You'll be given valuable skills and knowledge which you will need in your first graduate position. Another very good reason why you should choose UTS is that you have access to the resources of a university. And one of the main services that is available that I think is particularly relevant for anyone doing the practical legal training course is the access to the careers service. It's a free service to help you develop the skills, knowledge and confidence you need to start in your career. As a UTS postgraduate, you would have access to a postgraduate career support, including a career coach. So that is a very important service, a very valuable service that will be available to you. Certainly the career service is available to any UTS student at the moment, but there are some special services available to postgraduate students. Within the course, each of the subjects has a series of assessment tasks, and the amount of time that you need to devote to each of your subjects and the amount of teaching time involved, you will be familiar with your electives, which have 6 credit points. So for each 6 credit point subject here in the law faculty, there is 3 hours of teaching. That is generally made up of 1 hour of lecture time and 2 hours of workshop time. You need to be able to dedicate, just as we would be recommending for one of your electives, for every hour of, let's say, face-to-face class time, you need to have 3 hours to be able to do all of the work that is needed to be done, just the same as you have been doing for your electives. Within each of the subjects, as I mentioned, each of the assessment tasks are the sorts of tasks that you would be required to do in your first position as a lawyer. So in litigation and estate practice and transactional practice, you will be completing a practice file. And what this is a simulated file, just the same as you would be undertaking if you were acting for the purchaser of real estate, or if you had been given instructions to commence an action in court. You'll be preparing a will, there will be court experiences, you will have client interviews, and you will really become much more aware of the importance of file notes. But perhaps you don't ever become really so aware of the value of file notes until you actually go into practice. I am the subject coordinator for the subject practical experience, and the only assessment task in that subject is the completion of a reflective journal. And I'm continually surprised and delighted when I read about the experiences that our students are having in their workplaces and how much they have valued what they have learned in the coursework of the practical legal training program. And one of the items that often comes up is the value of writing a good file note. As the slide has there, we don't have any exams in the practical legal training program. All right, so now we get on to practical experience. So this is that 0 credit point subject, and it is made up of 15 weeks or 75 days of practical experience with an approved supervisor. Unfortunately, we are not able to find that placement for you. You have to find that placement. So that does involve applying to various places to see if they can take you on to complete your practical experience. Now, if you have already completed some work experience in a placement that would qualify under the practical experience rules, then you can get credit for up to a maximum of 12 weeks or 60 days of work experience that has been undertaken in the 2 years prior to the commencement of the subject. So let's say that you have been working in a legal office for all of this year, and you commenced in autumn next year, then you would be able to get that work experience credited to the 15 weeks of work experience that you need to complete for the subject practical experience. If you haven't had any work experience, that's no cause for concern at all. You have 2 years from the session of enrolment in practical experience to complete all 15 weeks or 75 days of the approved placement. And if something happens, so for example, you might become sick and you have been unable to get that placement, during that 2-year period, there are extensions available in special circumstances. So even though we are not able to find you a practical experience placement, there are some ways to assist you. So the UTS Career Hub does have placements. Whenever employers contact the career service, they will put up advertisements for those placements on Career Hub. We also have the UTS online PLT forum, and if employers contact us, we can put up advertisements on that forum. There's also the website Legal Vitae, which is part of the New South Wales Law Society website, where positions are advertised as well. In addition to these opportunities, we have within the law faculty at UTS, we have the Anti-Slavery Australia Centre, and that centre will always have at least 1 or 2 students who are undertaking their practical experience. We also have 1 or 2 students who work at the UTS Student Legal Service, and we also have 1 or 2 students who work with the UTS Solicitor, so that's the solicitor for the whole of the university. So there are various other places apart from the ones listed on that overhead where we know that UTS students will be able to undertake their practical experience. Unfortunately, most students will have to undertake their practical experience on a voluntary basis. Very few students manage to get a paid practical experience placement. So I do appreciate that that makes it very difficult if you're working in some other job where you are earning money and you need the money to pay the rent, you will have to make some arrangements. You can do your practical experience on a part-time basis on a minimum of 2 days per week. Many of the community legal centres take on students to do their practical experience as well. If you are doing your practical experience at the same time as you're undertaking those other 3 subjects with the PLT coursework, if you take 18 credit points or less per session, you can accrue up to 40 hours of practical experience per week. So if you were doing all of the PLT subjects, so legal and professional skills, transactional practice, litigation and estate practice, and practical experience, you could be accruing up to 40 hours of practical experience per week. However, if you take more than 18 credit points per session, so if you were doing 1 elective at the same time, then the maximum amount of practical experience that you can accrue is 2 days of practical experience per week. And this is on the basis that we are trying to look after your well-being. We don't want you to be working 8 days a week. So there is this limit that you can accrue a maximum of 2 days of practical experience if you are undertaking more than 18 credit points per session. All right, so on this slide, you can see that if you are a student who is enrolled in the straight LLB, you're not enrolled in a double degree, or you're not enrolled in the JD, in your final year of enrolment, in your final semester, you can complete the 18 credit points of the PLT subjects plus practical experience. So this is a very good opportunity for you to complete your practical legal training as part of your law degree. It is possible, as I mentioned earlier, to commence your practical legal training prior to completion of your law degree. But the only way that you can do that is if you get the written consent from the LPAB. And to get that written consent from the LPAB, you must have completed all of your core law subjects and have no more than 2 electives remaining in your law degree or your double degree. And you must be currently enrolled in your remaining electives while you are undertaking the PLT subjects. So this means that you can't do the PLT subjects and then do your electives. Either you have to do it at the same time that you are doing those remaining electives, or you do just part of the practical legal training program at the same time as you are completing those remaining electives. You need to apply to the LPAB to seek approval, and to do that you must include a letter from the Law Dean, so from Professor Leslie Hitchens, and the way that you obtain that letter is to email the Faculty of Law Academic Programs Officer to arrange the Dean's letter. Now, the Dean's letter can only be provided upon the results release, the session prior to the commencement of practical legal training. So if you're thinking that you would be commencing this summer, then you will need to wait until the results are released for spring session, and you can request the Dean's letter on the day that those results are released or after those spring results are released. Now, you can put in your application for the Graduate Certificate in Professional Legal Practice before or while you await the LPAB approval. If you are eligible, students may be made a special offer with conditions pending the LPAB approval. Now that will allow you to accept the offer and enrol in the subjects for the graduate certificate. If you are approved by the LPAB, you will need to provide UTS admissions with the approval letter by the due date listed in your offer letter. So you need to keep that in mind. You need to keep the date in mind, and then as soon as you've got that letter, you need to supply it to UTS admissions. If the LPAB refuses your application, or you fail a subject, you must withdraw from the PLT subjects before census date. So it's your responsibility to ensure that you have met the requirements of the early start rule. We recommend that you read the LPA guide for applicants for admission as a lawyer before you apply to start PLT early, and then you'll be very aware of all of the conditions that apply in that situation. As I mentioned to you before, you will be eligible for a 10% saving with the Alumni Advantage program. The Graduate Certificate in Professional Legal Practice is a postgraduate fee-paying program. So in 2020, the price per credit point is $523 per credit point. And as I mentioned before, all LLB and JD students receive an automatic 6 credit points of credit recognition. So that's when we're talking about a graduate certificate at UTS is 24 credit points of subject study, but you will only have to complete 18 credit points to be eligible for the award of the graduate certificate, plus that 0 credit point practical experience subject. HECS is not available for the graduate certificate in professional legal practice, but fee help is available. So you can apply for fee help, and there is the address that you can apply to. If you are doing your graduate certificate on a part-time basis, so perhaps you're only doing one subject, then you are only paying for the fees for one subject per session or 2 subjects per session. You don't have to pay the whole fee in the first session that you begin the practical legal training study. So there is a slide setting out the law options and the 18 credit points university law graduate studying the graduate certificate of professional legal practice are given automatic recognition for CBK 90399 law options. And as I mentioned before, you only pay for 18 credit points. One thing that you do have to keep in mind is that since January 2015, the LPAB applies what they call the stale learning clause. So what that means is at the time an applicant applies for admission as a lawyer, completion of their academic and practical legal training requirements for admission must have occurred within the previous 5 years. So before 2015, we used to be able to say to students, yes, you can take as much time to decide whether you want to practice as a lawyer, that you can take some time from the time that you finish your degree until the time that you commence your practical legal training. But these days, because of the stale learning clause, we really recommend that students undertake their practical legal training as soon as possible after completion of their law degree. So if you, by any chance, had left it longer than 5 years, then you would have to put in an application to the New South Wales LPAB for your qualifications to be assessed, and the LPAB would make a determination as to whether you need to do one or more of the course subjects again. So that's something that I'm sure all of you want to avoid if possible. And that's very easy to avoid if you commence your practical legal training study soon after completion of your law degree. All right, so applications are now open for summer 2020, so the summer that is about to begin. The applications close for domestic coursework on for summer, and that the final date for that is the 31st of October 2020. If a student is an international student, then that means that the summer session application must be in by the 15th of October 2020. The summer session starts on the 16th of November. So if you've already had a look to see when the final assessment period is for spring, you will know that that goes from about the 31st of October to the 14th of November. So you certainly won't have your results from spring session by the 16th of November, but so long as those results are available before the census date, so that you're able to show to the admissions people that you have qualified to do the course, then you would be able to start before your results are available. For others of you, it might be more attractive to start in the autumn session, and autumn session in, oh, I've just noticed a mistake there. It starts on the 22nd of February in 2021. Bit of a typo there, and then spring session starts on the 2nd of August 2021. The way that you apply is you'll put in an online application, which looks just like this up on the slide, but if you are an international student, you will need to apply via UTS International.